the warning in the stars. The night sky above Earth's colonies always felt alive, stars burning bright like ancient watchmen. Yet tonight the stars whispered a warning, a soundless threat that reached human ears through intercepted signals. It began with a simple code, a string of alien words carried across the void. At first the scientists thought it was a mistake, a garbled transmission from some unknown system. But when the message repeated again and again, translated into a single line, the truth spread like fire: prepare for extinction. Across the colonies, fear ran through the people. Workers left their machines, children stopped their games, soldiers froze as the words echoed through military command posts. Humanity had been mocked before, laughed at by the larger powers of the galaxy. But this was no laughter. This was a death sentence. In the capital halls of Earth's government, leaders gathered, their faces pale, their voices sharp with panic. Some demanded surrender, believing resistance was madness. Others shouted for war, reminding all that humanity had survived famine, plague, and endless conflict on Earth itself. Humanity never surrendered easily. But beyond the fear, something darker stirred, a resolve, a fire that would not die. People whispered to each other in streets and spaceports. If extinction was coming, then they would drag their enemies down, into the abyss with them. Among the first to notice the source of the signal was Lieutenant Arik Valen, a young officer stationed at an outpost near the Orion frontier. His screens lit up with ghostly traces of ships moving in formation, vast fleets of the alien empire. He stared in silence, his throat dry. For weeks there had been rumors, but now the proof was here. They were coming. The alien empire had always hated humanity. To them, Earth was a stubborn planet filled with unruly creatures, a species that refused to kneel before their council. They had conquered dozens of worlds, enslaved hundreds of weaker races. But humans had stood apart. They traded cautiously, spoke with defiance, and carried an independence that the Empire despised. Now the Empire wanted to erase that defiance forever. The report from Lieutenant Valen reached Earth's Central Command. Generals leaned over the glowing maps of space, watching as enemy fleets poured out of their strongholds. Their numbers dwarfed anything humanity could field openly. Their weapons were older, tested through centuries of conquest. Humanity seemed fragile in comparison, yet the eyes of the generals hardened. Humanity had something the Empire did not: the will to fight with nothing left to lose. News of the coming storm spread fast. On Mars, factories shut down normal production and began forging weapons. In the asteroid belts, miners offered their ships to be turned into war machines. On the moons of Jupiter, engineers worked sleepless nights reviving old blueprints that had been hidden away for years. Ordinary families gathered in fear. Parents clutched their children, telling them stories of Earth's old struggles, reminding them that humanity had always been hunted, always been tested, and always survived. The thought of extinction burned into every heart, but so did the thought of revenge. Still, the fear never fully left. In the quiet hours, when the signals grew louder, people wondered if they could truly resist. The alien empire was vast. Its fleets countless. To fight them was to challenge the very stars themselves. Yet a voice kept rising inside the human spirit, a voice that whispered, "We will not vanish." Lieutenant Valen watched as the alien fleet moved closer, their ships stretching like a black tide across the frontier. The young officer sent his final report and stared at the stars, his chest heavy, his heart racing. For the first time he understood what it meant. This was not just war. This was survival. In the shadowed rooms of Earth's military council, the highest admiral rose. Her voice cut through the fear like steel. If they want extinction, then they will find Earth ready. The chamber fell, silent. The choice was made. Humanity would not bow, not today, not ever. And far above, the stars still shone, but now they carried a warning. The hunters were coming, and humanity prepared to become the hunted that would bite back. Humanity refuses to bow. The alien empire expected fear to break Earth. They had sent their message of extinction with arrogance, believing humans would tremble and scatter. Instead, A strange silence followed across the colonies. Not the silence of surrender, but the silence of a predator waiting. In the underground chambers of Earth's Defense Council, leaders met in shadows. Some voices still spoke of giving in. They argued that resistance would only bring fire and death, that humanity was too young, too small to stand against an empire that had ruled the stars for centuries. But others stood taller, their eyes sharp, their words like knives. "We are not prey," they said. "We are human." The admiral who had spoken on the first night returned. Her name was Admiral Kaelin Dross. Her hair streaked with silver, her eyes hardened by decades of battles on Earth and Mars. She rose before the council and slammed her hand on the table. The sound echoed like a cannon. "No more bowing," she declared. "If they want war, we give them war." Outside, the people moved with new purpose. Engineers in Mars shipyards hammered metal into hulls, sparks flying as secret designs long, hidden came to life. For years, humanity had worked in silence, building in shadows, preparing for a day they hoped would never come. Now those hidden projects breathed fire. Warships unlike anything the galaxy had seen before began to rise from. Dark hangars on Luna Base, scientists activated forbidden weapons, strange prototypes dismissed by the Galactic Council as impossible, rail cannons that could pierce a planet's crust, stealth drives that bent light and sound, torpedoes that carried miniature suns inside them, all of it outlawed, all of it waiting in the dark. And now, humanity brought it to the light. In the crowded colonies, the people did not break. They clenched their fists. They gathered in halls and factories. Children watched their parents join militia ranks. Families painted the old Earth flag on walls and starships. It was not fear that bound them anymore. It was fury. Lieutenant Arik Valen, the same young officer who first saw the fleets, stood before his crew in the Orion outpost, his voice steady, though his hands still trembled. "They think we will kneel," he said. "But we stand." The words spread like wildfire, repeated in barracks, in mess halls, in streets, until it became a chant, a roar of defiance. The alien empire monitored the transmissions and grew puzzled. Other species had bent easily, begging for mercy, handing over leaders in chains. Humanity did not. Humanity sang old songs of war. Humanity sharpened blades. Humanity prepared. On the frontier, small skirmishes began. Alien scouts entered human space, expecting no resistance. Instead, they found hunters. Human patrol ships darted like wolves, striking from the dark, tearing apart scouts before fading away again. For every human ship lost, 10 alien vessels burned. The Empire sent messages to the Galactic Council, mocking humanity, laughing at their defiance. They promised to bring Earth cities to ashes and turn Mars into glass. But inside those threats was unease. For the first time, an empire that had erased entire species without pause felt the sting of doubt. On Earth itself, people gathered. In the old Capitol Square, a young girl raised a sign made from scraps of metal, painted in bold letters, "We don't bow." Her image spread across the networks, across Mars, across the moons, across the belts. Her small hands holding that sign became the face of humanity's defiance. Admiral Dross watched the image from her command room. She smiled for the first time in days. "Good," she whispered. "Let them see us." In hidden shipyards, the greatest secret of all still waited. A fleet known only to a few, built in silence, hidden in the asteroid belts. These were not ships of defense, but ships of vengeance, massive, sharp, alive with power. They had names carved into their hulls. Names of old battles, names of lost cities, names of extinct species humanity swore to avenge. The aliens thought humanity stood alone, but whispers spread of other races watching closely. Species enslaved by the Empire waited in silence. If humanity could stand, perhaps they could rise too. Humanity had become more than a target. Humanity had become a spark. As the alien fleets drew closer, Admiral Dross spoke to her people. Her voice broadcast across every colony, every ship, every home. "They tell us to bow, to break, to vanish," she said. her eyes like fire, her tone unshakable. "But we are human, we refuse, we rise, we fight." And as her words echoed into the silence, the colonies roared in answer. From the smallest outpost to the grandest city, one truth was clear: humanity would not bow. Not now, not ever. First clash at Orion's edge. The black emptiness of Orion's frontier stretched endless, a sea of stars too vast to measure. Yet in that dark sea, two storms moved toward each other. One was the alien fleet, shining with cold arrogance, thousands of ships moving like a single iron fist. The other was humanity's defense line, scattered ships smaller in number, but burning with something sharper than fear. Lieutenant Arik Valen stood on the deck of the warship Resolute, his eyes fixed on the void ahead. His crew whispered around him, tension sharp in the air. They knew what was coming. The first true clash, the battle that would decide if Earth's defiance was madness or destiny. The alien fleet arrived first, their ships vast and cruel, shaped like blades forged for slaughter. They sent a final message before opening fire. "Your time ends today." The words carried across human comms, heavy with mockery, heavy with certainty. But when humanity answered, it was not with words, it was with fire. The first salvo came from hidden cannons mounted on asteroids, beams of light slicing through the dark. Alien ships exploded in brilliant silence, their arrogance torn apart in seconds. The galaxy had expected humans to cower, but here at Orion's edge, the hunters had teeth. The aliens responded with fury. Their fleet pushed forward, weapons raining destruction. Human ships burned, hulls cracked open, lives lost in the black. The screams of the dying echoed through broken comms. Yet even in loss, the humans did not scatter. They fought harder, tighter, faster. The Resolute darted between enemy formations, striking like a wolf. Among lions, Lieutenant Valen gave orders with a steady voice. His heart thundered in his chest, but his mind stayed sharp. He used maneuvers no alien commander would expect. Diving through wreckage, hiding in shadows, striking at weak points, every human ship seemed to fight with that same wild spirit. They were not just defending space, they were defending existence itself, and the aliens began to notice. Their commanders saw losses pile higher than any campaign before. For every human ship destroyed, 3 alien ships vanished in fire. Admiral Kaelin Dross commanded from the flagship Vanguard. Her eyes calm, her orders precise. She moved her fleet like a blade cutting into flesh. Human ships worked together in ways the aliens never imagined. Their tactics broke every rule of war the Empire had taught. Because humans did not fight by their rules, the battle raged for hours. The stars burned with fire. The frontier itself seemed to tremble under the weight of destruction. Civilians across the colonies listened to reports with hearts frozen, hearing both victory and loss in equal measure. On Mars, families gathered in silence as names of the fallen scrolled across screens. But even as tears fell, fists clenched tighter. The sacrifice only hardened resolve. Humanity would not bow. Not after this, not ever. Back at Orion's edge, the Empire tried to shift tactics. They sent their heavy dreadnoughts forward, massive ships that had crushed entire species with a single volley. The sky itself seemed to shake under their fire. Whole human squadrons vanished, entire wings torn apart. For a moment, despair rose like smoke, but then the eraser whispered its presence, not revealed yet. Not fully awakened, but its shadow moved in hidden places. For now, humanity held with blood and fury alone. Lieutenant Valen's ship, torn and bleeding, still pressed forward. He shouted to his crew, "We don't run, we strike." The words gave his crew strength, and once more they lunged at the enemy, detonating torpedoes at close range, tearing apart ships many times their size. When the dust settled, the battlefield was broken. Wreckage drifted, both human and alien. The Empire had won in numbers, but their victory tasted bitter. For the first time in living memory, their fleets had bled in truth. They had faced prey that refused to die, prey that bit back hard enough to scar. Admiral Dross sent her final report to Earth, her voice steady though her fleet was torn. "We are hurt, but not broken," she said. "The Empire has seen our fire, and they will fear it." Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. The Empire had not crushed humanity in the first blow. Instead, the humans had stood at Orion's edge and burned their name into the stars. And far beyond, in hidden shipyards, the erasers stirred, waiting for the moment when humanity would no longer fight in defense, but in vengeance. The price of resistance. The battle at Orion's edge was over, but the scars it left ran deep across the human colonies. The names of the dead filled endless lists, screens glowing with sorrow in every home. Families gathered in silence, clutching photos of loved ones who would never return. Humanity had refused to bow, but the price of defiance was written in blood. On Earth, black banners hung in the cities, bells rang for the fallen. The sound echoed through streets where people stood with heads lowered, yet behind every tear there was a fire. A quiet promise whispered again and again. Their sacrifice will not be wasted. Admiral Kaelin Dross walked the halls of the Vanguard, her boots heavy, her face lined with grief. She had sent men and women into the void knowing many would never come back. She carried their weight in her silence. For every victory, she counted the cost. For every alien ship destroyed, there were human lives gone forever. Lieutenant Arik Valen sat in the medical bay of the Resolute, his arm wrapped in bandages. His crew lay in beds around him, some wounded, some motionless under white sheets. The young officer clenched his fists, his chest burning with anger. He had seen friends torn apart in seconds. He had watched the enemy laugh as human ships burned. The price of resistance was too high. And yet, surrender was unthinkable. The alien empire wasted no time. Their fleets moved closer. Their broadcasts filled the networks, images of burning colonies. Cities turned to ash. They spoke in mocking tones. This is the fate of humans who resist. But instead of breaking spirits, the images lit fires. People watched their worlds fall and swore revenge. If the Empire thought cruelty would win, they had miscalculated. On Mars, factories thundered day and night. The workers no longer thought of pay or rest. They worked with bleeding hands and burning muscles. Every hammer strike, every spark of welding was a cry of defiance. Ships rolled out of hangars faster than ever, smaller and cheaper, but deadly in swarms. Humanity had learned the cost of battle, and now they built with fury. In the outer colonies, militias rose. Farmers turned their plows into weapons. Miners strapped cannons onto freighters. Children too young to fight carried messages, built shelters, and prepared food for soldiers. Resistance was no longer only the work of fleets, it was the heartbeat of every human alive. Admiral Dross gathered her commanders in the dim war room, their faces lit by the flicker of star maps. "We bleed," she said, her voice low, "but so do they." She pointed at the reports. Alien fleets torn, dreadnoughts crippled, commanders slain. They expected us to fall in one strike. Instead we stand, and standing is our victory. Still, the doubts whispered. In quiet corners, people asked how long humanity could last. Could they survive another battle like Orion's Edge? Could they hold when the Empire's full might came crashing down? The fear was real, but fear was no longer the master. Defiance was. Lieutenant Valen returned to duty before his wounds healed. His eyes darker now, his smile gone. He stood before his crew and spoke with steel in his voice. "We've paid in blood," he said. "But every drop pushes us forward. We don't stop, not now, not ever." His crew answered with a roar, their spirits unbroken even as their bodies carried scars. The Empire, growing impatient, began to plan the next strike. They spoke of bombarding Earth itself, turning the cradle of humanity into ruins. Spies carried whispers of their plans, and the news spread like fire across the colonies. For a moment, silence fell over humanity. The thought of Earth, the home of all burning under alien fire, was unbearable. But that silence was broken by a single voice. A child's voice, broadcast from a colony on Titan. "Let them come," the child said. "Earth is not alone." The message spread, repeated by millions, whispered in every corner of human space. Humanity would not let Earth stand alone. They would defend it with everything. Even their last breath. The price of resistance was pain, loss, and endless blood. But humanity was willing to pay it. Because in every grave dug, in every ship lost, there was a truth stronger than fear. Humanity had chosen to fight, and that choice could not be erased. And in the hidden depths of the Kuiper Belt, engineers worked in silence, forging something vast, something that would shift the balance of war. The eraser stirred again, its frame glowing with power, waiting for the moment when humanity would unleash not just resistance but vengeance. The turning point. The war had reached its darkest hour. Human fleets were battered, colonies burned, and families mourned in silence. Yet in the shadows of the Kuiper Belt, far beyond Neptune's orbit, something waited, something that had been hidden for years. It was called the Eraser, not just a ship, but a weapon born from desperation and anger. Its size dwarfed every warship humanity had ever built. A floating city of steel, bristling with weapons forbidden by galactic law, weapons humanity swore never to use. Until now, the Eraser had been a secret whispered only between admirals, engineers, and a handful of leaders. It was forged in silence, fueled by the knowledge that one day the Empire would come. Now that day had arrived, and the ship awoke like a sleeping giant. Admiral Kalen Dross stood on its command deck. Her reflection caught in the glass as she looked out into the endless void. She knew what this moment meant. Once the Eraser revealed itself, there was no turning back. Humanity would no longer be a stubborn frontier race. Humanity would be a threat to the galaxy. Messages poured in from the colonies, voices tired and grieving but filled with iron. They had paid the price of resistance, and now they demanded vengeance. Give us a victory, they cried. Make them fear us. On the alien side, arrogance still clouded their vision. Their fleets pushed deeper, preparing to strike Earth itself. Commanders laughed as they boasted that humanity's fire was almost gone. They did not see the storm waiting in the dark. When the Eraser emerged from its hidden dock, the stars themselves seemed to dim. Its engines roared like thunder rolling across space. Its hull glowed with the light of thousands of cannons. It was not built to defend. It was built to destroy. The first test came swiftly. A massive alien armada moved near Saturn, ready to strike Mars and shatter humanity's heart. The Eraser jumped into position, tearing through space with impossible speed. Alien commanders scoffed at first, calling it just another ship. But when the Eraser fired, their laughter turned into silence. A single shot from its main cannon sliced through an enemy dreadnought, cutting the massive vessel in half like paper. In moments, entire squadrons vanished into fire. Across the human networks, cheers erupted. Families in shelters cried tears of hope for the first time. Children screamed in joy as they saw alien ships burn on their screens. Humanity had not only survived, it had struck back. Lieutenant Arik Valen, now transferred to the Eraser, felt his chest tighten as he gave firing orders, his voice steady, his eyes blazing. Every shot reminded him of the friends he had lost, the colonies burned, the screams he still heard in his dreams. Each explosion of alien steel was a piece of justice. The aliens tried to regroup, sending their heaviest warships against the Eraser. They poured fire into its hull, enough to tear moons apart. But the Eraser held. Its shields glowed, its armor bled sparks, but it did not break. It answered with storms of missiles, beams that split fleets apart. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's fleets wavered. Their commanders, so used to victory, felt doubt crawl into their hearts. They watched as their strongest ships fell, and they realized, too late, this was no ordinary enemy. This was humanity unleashed. Admiral Dross raised her voice on open comms, broadcasting across the battlefield. You wanted our extinction, she said, her tone sharp as steel. Instead, you face your own. Her words cut through space like a blade. Every human soldier, every colony, every survivor heard them. And in that moment, humanity believed again. The turning point had arrived. No longer was Earth a prey waiting for mercy. No longer was humanity standing only in defense. They had taken the fire given to them and turned it into a weapon that could burn an empire. In the alien capital, panic spread. Reports came in of shattered fleets, colonies rebelling, enslaved species rising. The Empire had been untouchable for generations, but now cracks spread. Through its foundation, the Eraser drifted silent after the battle, surrounded by wreckage. Its crew exhausted but alive, Admiral Dross looked at the stars and whispered, "This is only the beginning." And far across the galaxy, species long, silent listened, some trembled, fearing humanity's rise. Others whispered with hope. For the first time in ages, the Empire had been wounded, and it was humanity that delivered the blow, fire across the Empire. The destruction at Saturn was not the end. It was only the beginning. With the Eraser unleashed, humanity no longer fought to survive. They fought to strike back, to tear apart the empire that had promised their extinction. Word of the victory spread faster than light across the colonies. Families who once wept now lifted their heads with pride. Soldiers sharpened their blades. Engineers worked with fire in their hearts. Humanity had proven the empire could bleed, and now they wanted more. Admiral Kalen Dross stood at the heart of the War Council, maps of the galaxy glowing before her. "We have lived in defense for too long," she said, her voice steady. "Now, we carry the war to them." Around her, commanders nodded. Their eyes burned with the same fire. Humanity would not wait for the next attack. They would bring fire to the enemy's home. The Eraser led the way, its massive frame moving like a predator through the stars. Human fleets followed, no longer scattered but united. For the first time in history, every colony, every outpost, every soldier fought under one banner. Humanity stood as one. The first targets were supply routes, hidden convoys that fed the Empire's endless fleets. Human warships struck like shadows, tearing open transports, leaving wreckage drifting in the void. Without supplies, the Empire's fleets began to stumble. Their once unstoppable momentum slowed. In the slave worlds of the Empire, whispers turned into fire. Species long crushed under alien chains watched the humans rise, and they rose too. On the mining world of Veskra, slaves turned their tools into weapons. They overthrew their masters, painting the walls with the colors of rebellion. "We are not alone," they shouted. "Humanity fights, and we fight too." The Empire tried to silence the revolts, but their fleets were stretched thin. Every time they sent warships to crush a rebellion, the Eraser appeared, its cannons cutting down oppressors, its shadow giving hope. Humanity had become more than soldiers. They had become a symbol. Lieutenant Arik Valon led one of the smaller strike groups. His ship darted through enemy lines, burning supply stations, destroying outposts. He had been a boy of fear at Orion's edge, but now he fought with steel in his heart. His voice carried to his crew. "We are not just fighting for Earth," he said. "We fight for every world they crushed, every soul they tried to erase." Across the galaxy, the Empire grew weaker. Their leaders raged in fear. Their fleets grew desperate. Their once proud soldiers looked over their shoulders in dread, because everywhere they went, humanity followed. Striking with precision, striking with fury, Admiral Dross ordered a bold campaign. Human fleets would no longer fight near their colonies. They would march deeper into enemy space. They would strike at the Empire's core. "If they wanted extinction," she said, her eyes sharp, "then let us erase their throne." The Alien Council panicked, their palaces filled with fear. They had underestimated humanity, mocked them, laughed at them. Now they faced the impossible, defeat. Meanwhile, human colonies burned brighter than ever, not with fire but with unity. On Mars, workers chanted as ships launched. On Titan, families volunteered to support fleets. On Earth, millions marched in the streets, their voices rising like thunder. "We fight as one," they roared. "We fight until they fall." The Eraser became legend in the eyes of both friends and enemies, its name spoken with fear, its silhouette haunting enemy dreams. Children across human space drew it in their notebooks, calling it the Blade of Vengeance. Rebels in faraway worlds painted its symbol. On their walls, the Eraser was no longer just a ship. It was the promise of freedom. The Empire struck back with desperation, sending their greatest commanders, their strongest fleets. But they could no longer fight united. Rebellions tore them apart from within. Fear spread faster than their ships, and every time they thought they had trapped humanity, They found themselves, surrounded instead in one daring raid. The eraser destroyed a fortress that had stood for centuries. Its fall echoed across the galaxy like a drumbeat. The message was clear. No empire fortress was safe. No capital untouchable. The fire spread. Wider. Worlds that had never dared dream of freedom now rose in defiance. The galaxy itself seemed to shift. Humanity was no longer a target. They were the spark that set the empire ablaze. And in the silence of her command deck, Admiral Dross whispered to herself, "This is the turning of the tide." She looked at the map of burning systems and knew humanity had gone from prey to predator, from hunted to hunter, from victim to victor. The empire had threatened Earth with extinction. Now it was their own empire that faced the fire. The fall of their empire. The galaxy burned. World after world rose in rebellion. Fleets shattered. And the once mighty empire trembled like a dying beast. But one shadow still loomed above them all. The capital world. The throne of their rulers. A planet wrapped in steel and guarded by their greatest armada. To end the war, humanity would have to strike there. Admiral Kalen Dross stood at the heart of the eraser, her eyes locked on the map of stars glowing before her. Behind those stars was the enemy capital. For months they had bled the empire dry, but now it was time to finish the fight. "We end it here," she said, her voice low but sharp as a blade. Human. Fleets gathered in silence, thousands of ships old and new, scarred from battles but burning with fury. The colonies had emptied everything into this final push. Every ship that could move, every cannon that could fire, every pilot who could still breathe stood ready. Humanity had become one war machine. The alien empire prepared too. Their last fleet circled the capital like a wall of fire. Dreadnoughts and cruisers stretched across the void. Commanders barked orders with desperation. They promised their people that humanity would break on this wall, but behind their voices was fear for the first time. They did not believe their own words. The battle began with silence. Then the silence broke with fire. The eraser led the charge, its massive cannons tearing through the first wave. Human ships darted behind it, striking weak points, swarming. Enemy vessels. The void lit up like a storm of suns. Lieutenant Arik Valen stood at his console, his voice steady as he called out orders. He had grown from a young officer at Orion's Edge into a warrior hardened by fire. His crew followed him without hesitation. Their ship danced through the chaos, destroying alien cruisers twice their size. The alien fleet fought with desperation. They knew if they lost here, their empire would collapse. They unleashed everything, planet-crushing beams, swarms of drones, weapons never seen before. Human ships burned, thousands lost in the void. The cost was heavy, but humanity did not stop. The eraser cut a path toward the capital itself, its guns glowing white-hot, its shields flickering. Every shot shook the void, tearing holes in the enemy line. Alien commanders tried to stop it, sending their heaviest dreadnoughts, but the eraser met them head-on. Its cannons roared, splitting them apart. Admiral Dross raised her voice on open comms, broadcasting not just to her fleet but to the entire galaxy. "They threatened us with extinction," she said, her tone sharp as fire. "Today we end their empire." Her words spread like thunder, carried on human and rebel channels alike. Across 100 worlds, slaves cheered. Rebels lifted their weapons higher. Hope surged with every word. Finally, the eraser broke through. Human ships swarmed behind it. The capital world loomed ahead, its surface shining with towers of steel and weapons that had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Now those towers shook under human fire. The Empire's last fleet collapsed. Commanders surrendered or died. Their ships drifted burning into the void. The capital lay exposed. For the first time in history, the rulers who had enslaved the stars felt the terror of being prey. Human marines stormed the surface. Streets once filled with arrogance, now filled with smoke and fire. Statues of the Empire's leaders toppled. Crowds of freed species roared in rebellion. The throne that had stood for ages cracked under the weight of defeat. Lieutenant Valen stood on the surface beside his soldiers. The alien banners burned behind him. He looked at the people rising, the freed races shouting with joy. He whispered to himself, This is the end of their empire. Admiral Dross watched, from orbit, her eyes fixed on the capital as fire spread. She knew humanity had changed forever. They were no longer a species mocked and dismissed. They were a force that reshaped the galaxy. In the Galactic Council, silence ruled. No one dared mock Earth now. No one dared laugh at humanity. Instead, they watched with unease, with awe, with fear. Humanity had risen from extinction's edge and torn down an empire. The final transmission of the war carried across every world. Admiral Dross's voice calm, unshakable. "You wanted us gone," she said, "but it is your empire that is gone." Instead, and in that moment the galaxy shifted. Humanity stood not as victims, not as prey, but as victors. The species that had been threatened with extinction had erased an empire instead.